Welcome back to the Commentary Podcast. This is episode 39. I'm going to be doing this episode alone because, like I've probably told you guys before, we have absolutely terrible time management and end up having to rush all these episodes out each week. And not a lot of stuff's happened this week. A couple um, notable signings, but a lot of people just trying to either get rid of people to get under the cap or uh, getting as many players as they can to fill out their team. I think the Saints, who were pretty much in the most cap trouble at the start of this offseason, have officially gotten under the cap. They let go of Emmanuel Sanders this week, who signed with the Bills. But they lost a lot of players. And I don't care if you have Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill starting. I don't see them winning a lot of games this year. A couple other teams made some pretty big moves. Let's see. The Giants. The Giants signed a couple people this week. They signed Kyle Rudolph, Kenny Galladay. Kenny Galladay got a huge contract. I want to say 4 years, $72 million, which he deserved. I think a lot of people were waiting to see who the first receiver taken would be to kind of set the market price, and I don't think anyone saw Kenny Galladay getting that much money. But yeah, the Giants needed it, so good for them. They also signed Adoree Jackson, who was released by the Titans. Adoree Jackson hasn't done great the last couple seasons, and they gave him a relatively big contract, which honestly wasn't the smartest move. I mean, their cornerbacks are not good. They definitely needed to pick up some free agent cornerbacks, but I do not think Adoree Jackson was the right choice. But with the Giants getting good, people have been talking about the NFC East because obviously the NFC East is the worst division in football. As seen last year, the Washington football team won it at like 8-8. So people think the Giants could win it too, which as a Cowboys fan is very disheartening to hear. But I think as long as Daniel Jones is the head of that team, I don't think they're making it very far. I've seen a lot of people trying to compare Daniel Jones to Josh Allen and say that maybe he'll have a breakout year in his third season, and I just do not see that happening. Daniel Jones has started 26 games and I think has close to 60 turnovers. He cannot hold on to the ball. His decision making is not good. I mean, Josh Allen, he had mistakes. He needed to develop when he came out of college. But, I mean, he took them to the playoffs and the Bills to the playoffs and honestly almost won a wild card game against Houston in his second year. He didn't have to improve on a lot. He had a lot of raw talent, and his decision making was already pretty good. He just needed to get some stuff down. And we saw him have a breakout season this year. Daniel Jones, I don't think, is going to have that. And I don't think there's a lot of bias in that. I think a lot of people share that opinion about Daniel Jones. But as a Cowboys fan, I think you could see how I don't want to talk about the Giants being too good. The Broncos made a couple signings. They signed safety Justin Simmons to a big contract. He deserved it. He had a great season last year. They signed Kyle Fuller from the Bears. He's an all-pro cornerback. He's really good. And the Bears had to let him go. They just couldn't fit in the cap. Which is kind of weird because they gave Andy Dalton a $10 million contract. So, I mean, if you look at it, would you rather have Kyle Fuller or Andy Dalton? I think I might have rather had Fuller around and just start Nick Foles at quarterback. I mean, I don't think Andy Dalton's a huge upgrade, whereas Kyle Fuller is an all-pro cornerback. The Broncos also signed Ronald Darby. So the Broncos, their defense is looking really good. Obviously, they got Von Miller back. So, I mean, maybe they. I mean, it's not going to be the 2015 defense, and obviously Drew Lock isn't Peyton Manning, who even in a deteriorated state could still play in some games. Obviously better than Drew Lock can. I don't know what they're gonna do at quarterback. They have a relatively high draft pick. I think in the low teens. I don't know if a quarterback's gonna be around then, or if they would trade up to get one. But I think they have to do something because Drew Lock is not gonna win you games. And I mean, if the defense can hold opponents to less than 17 points, maybe Drew Lock can get you 20, but I don't want to have to rely on Drew Lock. The Bucks somehow got everyone back. A lot of people were thinking um, they would have to pick Levante David or Shaq Barrett, and Ndamukong Suh was like an afterthought. Like, obviously he's gonna have to leave, but they somehow fit it in the cap. Maybe the cap space is just non-existent in Tampa Bay, but they they tagged Chris Godwin, they signed Levante David, signed Shaq Barrett, signed Gronk, signed Ryan Suckup, signed Ndamukong Suh. I don't know how. I feel like their next move should be Leonard Fournette. If they can somehow get him back, he was a huge force in the playoffs last year, and overall was just a great, great player. Antonio Brown is also a free agent still. I have a feeling he'll be back in Tampa for $1 million. I don't think any team is gonna take a chance on him after his off-field antics. And I mean, honestly, Tom Brady might be the only quarterback that can really deal with him for now. James White signed back with the Patriots. It was reported that he might go to Tampa because obviously Tom played with him. He's a great gadget running back, but he wanted to stay in New England, and I don't think that's a bad decision. I think New England has a good team that is obviously much improved from last year. So I'm excited to see how they do. The Bengals also had a great offseason so far. They signed Trey Hendrickson, who had a breakout season for the Saints last year. He wasn't the leader in sacks, but I mean, he was up there. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but he had a really good season. They signed Mike Hilton and Chidobe Awuzie, both at cornerback. Those are two solid guys. The Bengals, I feel like their main focal point should have been the offensive line because of how bad they were last year, and they got Joe Burrow injured. But I'm kind of just happy to see the Bengals making any moves in the offseason, even if they really just bolstered the defense. It's still good to see. And obviously they have a high draft pick. They can draft the best offensive line in the draft. So they should get better, but I feel like you could have not signed one of these defensive backs and maybe tried to get one of those top tier linemen that were on the board. Aldon Smith, who had a relatively good season with the Cowboys last year, is not re-signing. I don't really understand this for the Cowboys. I'm almost positive you get him for extremely cheap. I don't think any other team's gonna pick him up. And he had a good season. He didn't play bad. On a defense that was absolutely terrible in almost every metric. Aldon Smith had a relatively good season, especially for being out for the last 4 years. So I would have liked to see him back in Dallas. I don't really know why they cut ties with him, unless he was asking for a lot more money than he's worth, but I don't feel like he would have done that. But if the Cowboys can do anything on defense, I'll be happy because it was really bad last year. The Colts re-signed T.Y. Hilton. That's a big move. The Colts really needed wide receivers. I think Sammy Watkins is coming to the facility either today or tomorrow. And if they got him too, that'd be a huge signing. I don't know if because they got T.Y. they might back off. But if they got Sammy Watkins and Ty, I think they'd be a real contender. The AFC South is a good division. The Titans obviously won it last year. They're doing great. The Jaguars could win a couple games. They get Trevor Lawrence in there. They've also made a couple moves in the offseason to bolster their team up. So I mean, that division could go any way. I think it really depends on Carson Wentz and how he plays. Let's see. Jadeveon Clowney is visiting Cleveland. I think that'd be a good move for him. He didn't have a great year. He was obviously injured for most of the year last year in Tennessee. And I think he still has the ability to be a dominant edge rusher. He's had a couple off seasons, but he's just so athletic. Especially if you put him across from Myles Garrett and take some of the pressure off him. With obviously a great front seven in Cleveland, I think he could get back to how he was in Houston and really have a good season. The Cowboys signed Jaron Kearse at safety. I doubt that name means much to anyone because I didn't even know much about him. But I'm happy the Cowboys are just getting defensive talent. Yeah, so not a ton in the NFL. There's a couple cool stories. Let's see. One being that Najee Harris, Alabama running back, who will be in the draft this year, he couldn't get his flight to the Alabama Pro Day, so he drove 9 hours from 1 a.m. to 10 a.m. to get there and just support the Alabama players at the Pro Day. Pretty cool. Seems like a good dude. I think he'll be in the first round draft pick. I've seen a lot of mock drafts having him go to the Bills, and any team he goes to, I think he'll be a really good addition. You've probably seen the stuff with Deshaun Watson. I don't want to touch a lot about it because nothing's official yet. But whatever happens, I hope the truth comes out. In other sports news, though, March Madness was pretty much all last week on the weekend. And a lot of stuff happened. I'm not a huge basketball guy, much less college basketball guy, but I mean, I made a bracket anyway. And I had Illinois going all the way. Obviously, Illinois lost to Loyola Chicago in the second round, which wasn't great. It definitely screwed up my bracket for good because it was already going downhill. I mean, this is the first year that I really paid attention to it, and I didn't expect that many upsets. I don't know. I think it's still an off year where there shouldn't be this many upsets, but it's crazy. And for the people who are doing good, I don't know how you predicted some of this stuff. Oral Roberts in the Sweet 16. They beat Ohio State and Florida. I mean, even if you had them losing the second round, who predicted that Oral Roberts would beat Ohio State? It doesn't make sense to me. Syracuse beat West Virginia. I talked to some people that wasn't a huge surprise. But it was an 11 seed against a 3 seed. Let's see. Texas lost to Abilene Christian. I think I watched that game. Texas had like 25 turnovers. So yeah, overall, it's been an interesting tournament. But I'm really enjoying it. I think the Sweet 16 starts this weekend. And I will be watching my TV for the entire weekend. So thanks for watching. I know this was a bit of a shortened episode, but I think we'll have the whole crew back together soon. and be ready for episode 40. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys later.